Dirty Mr. Orlando, and the Murky Trap. Fagsy town, located at the banks of majestic gurgling Ganges, was experiencing its first shiver of winter. At the outskirts of the town, in a quaint and cute house, stood an open-roof laboratory with beakers, fumes, a huge portrait of Archimedes, and a huge telescope. In between the telescope and the portrait was a huge bathtub with Mr. Vpathy, an astro-scientist, in the bathtub, absorbing the chill of the night. His mission was to send some fumes to Jupiter's moon Europa. These fumes were traveling up in the sky, establishing a connection with a shadow sitting in the clouds. The shadow descended clandestinely and plucked a hair from Mr. Vpathy's head and rushed back to sit on the clouds. This quaint brick house was located adjacent to the main road. A young officer of the intelligence service, Alan, 23 years of age, was driving his car with great speed. He had to join his office at Fagsy town before the clock struck 12 midnight. His senior had laughed when he had heard Alan was being posted to Fagsy. He had said, "My friend, you are going in a land of gold mines." Officer Allen had asked, "Gold mines? Mischief and crimes are like gold for an intelligence officer. My friend, you will discover enough gold before you turn old." He had laughed boisterously. The anxiety of reaching on time and this sentence of his senior was circulating in his mind when he saw some figures cross the road. They were dressed in white, and to the officer's astonishment, they jumped from a great height and vanished in the jungle. Officer Aaron laughed aloud. "Nay, they cannot be ghosts." Back to Professor Vpathy. Professor Vpathy was sitting in the bathtub, found some dots sprinkled everywhere in his open laboratory. "Bodies not in the night," he said, and threw that white deposit towards the beaker. The white powder entered the flames and produced a blue cloud that commenced traveling up in the sky. With eyes of astonishment and utter bewilderment, Vpathy peeped in his telescope and screamed, "Eureka! My blue fumes are uniting with Europa's blues!" The shadow sitting in the clouds chuckled. The powder had established a connection with Mr. Vpathy. The shadow uttered, "Dum, dum." Vpathy repeated, "Dum, dum, dum, dum." Connection established, the shadow whispered, smiling at the achievement. Vpathy danced with euphoria on his rooftop. While dancing, his hand hit the pot placed on the wall. The pot dived down, and voice of frantic mewing of a cat and a man screaming traveled up. Vpathy peeped down and saw Orlando standing with his spiritual cat, Funny. "How dare you!" Orlando screamed from beneath. Vpathy knew it was Fagsy's nuisance Orlando, and realizing he wasn't heard, screamed, "Go away!" Orlando declared, "My name is Orlando Pinch, and now the revenge is on me." That night, Orlando returned with his spiritual cat Funny to steal what Vpathy was creating. Funny, being a spiritual cat, tried stopping Orlando, but when he did not budge, she whacked him with his tail and left. Orlando climbed the roof, stole the white powder and left, leaving a note for Mr. Vpathy. A note from Orlando Pinch. "The salt is mine, revenge taken." The next morning, when Mr. Vpathy went to the laboratory, the case in which he had secured that salt was missing, and found Orlando's note. In an utter state of frenzy, Vpathy ran towards the banks of Ganges. A passerby warned Vpathy, "Sir, don't go near the river. There are strong undercurrents." Vpathy was fuming. "I have to catch that Orlando. He takes bath in Ganges every Friday." "He never takes bath," passerby screamed. But till then Vpathy was in the water. The undercurrents pulled him in, and his head, his limbs, his face, and the moustache on his face were drowned in water. This dipping in the holy Ganges wasn't followed by a peaceful trip to heaven. Many people jumped in and pulled Mr. Vpathy out. Some held his hands, some torso, and some feet. An elderly man held his moustache, which was trying to escape from his face. Officer Allen had come for a walk on the banks in the morning. He went straight to the location of commotion and asked, "What is the matter?" Mr. Vpathy tried committing suicide because dirty Orlando stole Vpathy's salt, said a passerby. Another said, "He's a real nuisance, should be punished. He is so skilled at irritating everyone." An inquisitive reporter was eavesdropping. He caught the main point. He immediately called his office and said, Hello, today's headline." Then he went to a corner and said, "Scientist Vpathy tried committing suicide because dirty Orlando stole his new invention. People are fed up of Orlando. Dirty Orlando to be killed soon." Actually, his ears misinterpreted skilled and heard killed. So instead of skilled, he wrote the headline, "Dirty Orlando to be killed soon." Orlando took the salt and reached home. He was thrilled by his spectacular feat of stealing Vpathy's salt. He placed the salt in his boots and relaxed on the sofa. A newspaper landed through his window with the headlines, "Dirty Orlando to be killed soon." Orlando panicked. Just then a knock at the door and a call, "This is Officer Allen," from outside, made Orlando hastily wear his boots with the white salt hidden in it. He jumped through his window and rushed out. An electric rickshaw was passing by. In an attempt to stop the rickshaw, he held the rear end of the rickshaw. The rickshaman's memory of an abusive trip with Orlando was right. He didn't stop the rickshaw, instead speeded hastily. Orlando continued to hold the rear end of the rickshaw. Spiritual Funny was in the bushes. The cat jumped out of the bushes to save Orlando. Under normal circumstances, she would not have ever touched any item of his clothing, but this was an exceptional case. She jumped high and held Orlando's shorts. Perchance, one of her nails scratched him gently. He screamed loudly. The rickshaman lost balance. Orlando, Funny, and Orlando's boots flew up in the air. The boots turned and spilled the celestial powder on Orlando's hair. Vibrations traveled from Orlando to Europa to the shadow back to Orlando's head. Orlando murmured, "Tum tum tum tum." Thus began the story of Murky Trap. Characters in the book: Professor Vpathy, astrophysicist in his 50s. Officer Allen, 23-year-old handsome officer handling Orlando's case. Arya Vpathy, Vpathy's 24-year-old son, a brilliant space scientist. Damini Vpathy, Professor Vpathy's wife, more powerful than gravity. Anna, Orlando's 19-year-old daughter, a student at the Space Center. Bobita, Dirty's estranged wife, a fan of Leo Tolstoy's Anna Karenina. Rod Stewart music and tap dancing. Mr. Kumar, the corrupt cultural minister of Fagsy. Song Key, Mr. Kumar's 17-year-old daughter, an admirer of Korean pop and dramas, V. Rangana, Songki's maverick granny. Some white figures in the bushes, shadow on the cloud, Jupiter's moon Europa, and a suspenseful, handsome Godly.